Hello and welcome to this round number 13. Unlucky for someone here at Grand Prix Sao Paulo. We have Mateus Yanagira against Winston Oyedamari, and we are going to get a chance to see a little bit more modern action. These guys at 10-2, so in nice shape going into this round. Looks like we got Tron on one side. On the other side of things, well, there's a search for tomorrow, and that means that potentially we're going to see, well, it tends to be one of two different options. It's either escape shift kind of deck, or a through the breach list that's leaning on Primeval Titan. So either way round, Valakut the Molten Pinnacle important, but the details of quite how you get there can vary just a little bit.
Okay, so this round we have Mateus versus Winston, two players that have previously beaten me at a modern PPDQs.
Boom!
Okay, so maybe a little bit technical issue. So anyways, Mateus, he was the very experienced N-Asian player that I was referring about. Maybe he had a different reasons to choose a different deck today. If he's playing that red-green Titan Shift deck, that's a deck that really was all the rage about 18 months ago. Then after the excellent Black-Red Pendant and the Humans deck got popular, we saw it falling out of flavor. One of the reasons might be that it's actually a very difficult deck to properly fine-tune. We see versions with and without Bloodbraid Elf. We see all sorts of different sideboard plans that may involve taking out Escape Shift or not. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what Mateus came up with.
Yeah, early turns of the game, we see that there's been a couple of copies of Sylvan Scrying used to assemble Tron. It's not the prettiest way of getting Tron into play, but by turn 4 there will be 8 mana available on one side of the battlefield. So that is not too bad a plan for the Tron list. Now, if you're on the other side of things, clearly you have the potential to get a lot of lands in play very fast. How quick are we really talking about this through the breach list being?
I think Red Wing deck is a fundamental turn 4 deck. I don't think it can mathematically get a turn 3 queue, but it's very consistent in getting a turn 4 queue. Now, if it is on the draw against a deck like Tron, Tron can land a Karn before that, and if Karn gets into the table, then it gets hard for Red Wing to race it.
So just a couple of technical issues here. On our side of things, we can't quite see everything that's going on. Not quite sure whether or not that applies to you guys at home. We're just going to try and get that fixed up for you in a moment here. We don't want to miss too much of the magic that's going on here. Okay. So it looks like a couple of little technical issues just getting in the system here. We're going to try and get them smoothed out for you just as soon as we possibly can. Make sure that we don't miss too much magic here. Of course, plenty of magic going on around the room, as there has been all weekend. We'll, as soon as we're able to, get back to that and show you a little bit more of that matchup as it's playing out, because kind of an interesting collection of decks there. I like the fact that when it comes to Primeval Titan, it's gone through various iterations of being one of the things that feels most unfair that you can do when you're maybe doing something with Amulet Bloom, to feeling like a comparatively fair option in some of the other lists that are being played in this modern format. But I mean, one thing that can't really be denied, quite how powerful the Primeval Titan is. Yeah,
it's really up in the air right now. What is the best Primeval Titan deck? You mentioned that Amulet Titan deck. It's a fantastic choice as well. It's a deck that really abuses the Ravnica bounce land mechanics. It uses the downsides of the card, such as it comes into play tapped and having to return a land to your hand, as upsides. Because of Amulet, it can generate some have tutored with a Primeval Titan. You return to your hand, then you use the transmute ability, find some respect, keep those Primeval Titans going. It's a deck with all those cogs and strings, like a well-oiled machine, like those old maybe cuckoo clocks. But instead of having a cute mechanical board, it's just a Primeval Titan coming every turn, and it strikes twice because it's double strike.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's when you say it fast, it sounds easy. A bit of a puzzle to play, though. One of the cool things about it, I guess, that it's a puzzle that is comparatively consistent in terms of how you work with it. Like, it's one of those decks, much like Crackline Ironworks, that if you go through your key combinations, you can kind of work through it at home. You don't necessarily need an opponent for each and every time that you play it, just to get a feel for those key interactions.
Yeah, if you have more of a visual memory like I have, if you see the deck going off once, then it gets a lot easier to understand, which is why it's good to have those decks on camera every now and then to educate your viewers.
Yeah, and like on the other side of things, Tron, it feels like kind of a known force, but the iterations that it's gone through as well, I mean, obviously when we had a block where all of a sudden there were lots of Eldrazi added, it gained a few useful little pieces there. But in some respects, the bit that excites me about the deck right now is the journey it's been through in terms of the colors that it plays.
Right.
Back when Tron was first troubling Modern, sometimes we were looking at blue-white. It was kind of a control list leaning on Mindslavers. Then there were the red-green lists that were utilizing red for a little bit more board control. They had a little bit more board sweeping. We've now found ourselves in a world where actually the lists can do their board sweeping using colorless cards, so simply being a green deck essentially for Sylvan Scrying and Ancient Stirrings is good enough, and then they just sneakily have all of this card drawing. You've got the chromatic spheres, the chromatic stars. They're going to be able to just do everything that they need to do to get their lands into play, but at the same time they're also able to just draw a whole bunch of cards. So it's like it's one of these lists that on the face of things, you know, it's a ponderous 60-card deck that's going to try and get these 3 lands in play and then cast big spells, but some proportion of the time it's actually able to just get play as a 52-card deck and much more consistently be lucky. Like I think that we've now hit a point where everyone kind of gets it, that actually what it means to be lucky with Tron is not just hitting Tron on turn 3. That's almost to be expected. It's what happens after that.
Yeah, so having Tron on turn 3 is important. The better Tron players are going to mulligan after those kind of starts. And after that, it's just usually a matter of waiting a few turns to get this enormous threat, and end of turn with you to win the game. You mentioned earlier the version that is called Mono Blue Tron. That's pretty much a work of passion. I think it was good once in 2014 when Birthing Pod was popular. Then it hasn't been good ever since. Never stopped people from playing it. There's this streamer, I think it's called Connervous. He only plays that deck all the time.
Wow.
There's this 600-page thread forum discussing the deck that people keep updating it. And, you know, it's one of those work of passions in Modern. Then there are versions with Tron that they used to play white for Path to Exile and Rest in Peace, when you know those cards were important to attack the metagame. Versions with red, with Pyroclasm, that we saw absolutely dominating a game yesterday. Like it come back when no other card could. There were versions with black, with Collective Brutality and Fader Push. I mean, really, it's proven itself to be a very big customizable deck. Probably one of the strongest strategies in Modern, if you consider all the period of time that the format has existed. And every now and then it's going to come and dominate it. We see a lot of it at the top tables today. Perhaps we could see a couple in the top 8.
Now, for those of you wondering what you're watching right now and why there's not a whole lot on screen, we have got a little bit of a technical glitch going on. We've been trying to give you a little bit of update on now. We had, a little bit of an abortive. Many apologies for that, but we are back to our live magic, so a chance for Titan Shift to redeem itself on camera. As far as we're concerned, we didn't see it lose at all. So maybe these numbers all just a fiction, but I think that realistically, more than likely it's going to have to win 2 on the bounce here if it's going to be able to make its way out of this round 13 matchup. It turns out when I said at the top of the round that 13 was going to be unlucky for someone, kind of unlucky for all of us. Sorry about that, kind of jinxed it. But we will now be able to get back into Magic in earnest just as soon as these guys finish resolving their shuffling, their mulligans, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, Winston with the Tron Tactical Mulligan. The deck is supposed to mulligan his first hand if it's not great, especially when it's on the draw. The second mulligan, it's going to be a lot tougher decision. He's not going to have much wiggle room after that. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what kind of options he's presented.
And when you say a tactical mulligan, are we talking about a hand that can't reliably assemble Tron, or are there other key, maybe sideboard cards that factor into that decision too?
I think in this particular matchup, it's mostly going to be Tron on turn 3. The games where he is in the draw, he really needs a fresh start, especially against like Titan Shift that can reliably kill him on turn 4.
All right, 6 cards. Going down to 5 is where it gets really precarious. He's got a forest. It doesn't look like he's got a whole lot of other land.
Yeah, that doesn't look like a hand that can assemble Tron on turn 3. So this is the tough mulligan decision that he's presented with a 6-card hand. With a 7, that would be a snap mulligan. But is it worth going to 5 here?
I mean, I guess that the one consolation prize for Winston right now, at least he's already a game up. So if it works out that his draws in this game are a little poorer than he might ideally like, at least there's a chance that he can still stay in this game. Or in this match, rather.
Right, so I really don't see any Urza's land. He does have that Warping Whale that could potentially counter Escape Shift, so it really depends on how much value he's giving that card.
He's giving it some serious thought here. I mean, I guess that this is one of the other good things about when your first game only takes 10 minutes or so is you can take the time on these mulligan decisions. It's not dramatically going to hamper how things go. And actually, let's be honest, when you're mulliganing to 5, there's every chance that this second game is not going to take very long.
Yeah, well, or he could have full loser Tron with Karn. I mean, Tron is very good at mulligan, even to low numbers. I know players that have mentioned winning games in mulligan to 2. Something that really no other modern deck could pull off.
Yeah, it doesn't happen too terribly often, but when it does, always a story.
It's going to be great if it does happen here.
All right, 5 cards. Come on, Winston, you can do this. And by do this, I only mean, find a hand that you can keep.
Nope, no lands at all.
Apparently he can't do this. I know nothing.
That was not a tactical mulligan.
Yeah, at some point, it's not so much tactical as just... you're wasting all of our time now, Winston. We spent all of this time and effort with our technical team trying to bring back the real Magic so that we could see games in action. And what do you bring us? A whole bunch of shuffling. The picnic basket's all over this chat at this point.
Can we get to appreciate his dragon sleeves? So there's that going on.
The consolation dragon sleeves. You're better than that, Lucas. All right. It looks like we've seen a scry. So this is a keep on 4. And Mateus on the play, just starting things off. Cinderglade, nice and easy. There's his power plant into a Chromatic Sphere. All right, all right.
That's one.
He's got a second land. I believe he does have a copy of Sylvan Scrying in hand.
Yeah, Mateus playing that Accelerator on turn 2 is something he's supposed to do basically every game. His deck is very done in that aspect.
So activates Chromatic Sphere to generate green mana and draw a card. Ideally looking to find a land right now. Oh, that's fantastic.
That's number 2.
So Urza's Power Plant was his play on turn 1. There's an Urza's Mine. He casts a Sylvan Scrying, and magically, Malta 4. Was it? It was 4, right?
Was a mulligan to 4. He's going to have Tron on turn 3. Now, if he top decks a Karn, he could win this game.
And this is what Tron does, right, is it sets up a position where its top decks are going to be fantastic because it has some very, very high impact cards that can play substantially earlier than seems reasonable. Tyler's Tracker coming into play along with a Valak at the Molten Pinnacle, so that means that we're going to get our first clue token of the game. And what was the pickup? Do we have something big that can get cast off all this mana? I think there might be a Wormcoil Engine there.
Yeah, that's a Haymaker.
All right. Winston, I mean, this is unprecedented from a 4-card hand. It's very rare that you get a chance to see this sort of thing in any format, in any time, but this Tron list, it clearly does not want to give up on Winston, even if Winston maybe was losing a little hope with the cards that he was drawing.
With his back against the wall, 2 losses at the Grand Prix, his deck is repaying the favor. I mean, it's what Tron is supposed to do. It's supposed to Mulligan has that don't have Versus Tron until it does have it.
All right, so more copies of Farseek, meaning that Mateusz Janaguri here, Janagura, very close to being able to start using that Valakut the Molten Pinnacle.
And he's going to have a lot of draws to find a escape shift or find his Primeval Titan and return back in the game. So, you know, despite of his good fortune, Winston is still in a very good position here. I mean, unless he can play that Oblivion Stone.
2 Oblivion Stones in hand.
Right.
This is just crazy.
He's going to get rid of the clues. So all that work by Mateusz assembling the Tireless Tracker is going to be undone by the Oblivion Stone if Winston chooses that line.
I mean, Mateusz just got 2 cards left in hand. Yes, he has access to 6 mana right now. Winston has access to 7. What is this world that we find ourselves living in?
Because Mateusz's deck is really based around Primeval Titan and Escape Shift. And he does have 10 to 12 copies of those cards. But if he doesn't find them, it's really all blanks against Winston's top deck.
So there we saw activation of Security Belder after blocking, so that lifelink wasn't going to do a whole lot. And now here comes the Oblivion Stone with enough mana to activate it if Odomori so chose. It looks like he doesn't mind too much.
Yeah, he's not going to give Mateusz the chance to untap and sacrifice those clues. And he's still going to get ahead on the board after that.
Now, those 2 3/3s, they are a little bit vulnerable to Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, it must be said.
Yeah, so Winston is now going to have his 6th mountain, which means he can start dealing 3 damage for every mountain that he gets into play.
But not too many cards in hand for Mateusz right now, so he's going to have to hope that they're good ones. Obviously, one of the best things that he could be doing right now involves getting a Primeval Titan in play, or indeed casting Escape Shift.
Oh, boom. Yeah, just lethal. So Mateusz here can sacrifice all his lands. He's going to have 6 triggers from Valakut. So he could get, that's probably more than enough from that position.
Yeah, I mean, 17 life. Basically, when you've got that Escape Shift, the number of lands that you need in play for it to be a lethal proposition kind of comes down to your opponent's life total. And they're on 17.
Yeah.
3 times 6 is 18. That enough to close things out. So working out very, very nicely indeed. We can see their Escape Shift reprinted in M19. That one, a very exciting card for a lot of people. A number of really, really powerful reprints in M19, in addition to some cool new cards. And I think it goes to show that just because you've got a core set does not mean that you can't have a powerful set.
Yeah, that reprint's going to be very good news for people that maybe are trying to assemble this Titan Shaft deck that we see in camera right now. You can also play it in the deck with more colors and based around Cryptic Command. You just need to have the right number of duels that also count as mountains for it to be lethal. You can play it potentially with Prismatic Owen for the combo too.
I mean, I guess that one question mark for me right now is, because it's in a core set, all of a sudden it's been reintroduced to Standard, and I'm not convinced off the top of my head that I can think of a really compelling reason to be doing too much for it in Standard right now, but I would love to be proven wrong.
Yeah, maybe someone breaks it. I know it's not going to be me. I'm not that creative to go deep in a card like that, but it's a powerful effect. And there are players out there that just see Magic as a game of exploration, of trying to get use of the more powerful cards, no matter how difficult the deck building challenge is going to be.
I mean, maybe something with Mending of Dominaria, so you get all of those lands you sacrifice back into play again. Like,
yeah, that's a big ramp.
That's a lot of mana all of a sudden,
right?
Crucible of Worlds is around as well, so the lands that you're sacrificing are doing things. There are deserts that are essentially spells that are lands. Like, there may be room for doing something. I mean, just Crucible of Worlds and deserts is kind of exciting. That another reprint that's in M19.
Yeah, there's already a ramp deck in Standard. I think it was created by Zach Elsick, which is exactly the kind of person you would expect to make a card like Spaceship in Standard. Him, the Sam Blacks, the Matt Nasses of the world, people that can see the game, at this level.
Yeah, sometimes it's about having the vision and then being willing to spend the time. And
Right.
some of us have the vision but don't have the time. Some of us don't have the vision in the first place, so the time doesn't really matter. Like, I think that the interesting thing to me is that some of the lists that, for example, Matt Nass has been working on for years now to get up to a point of being Grand Prix winning lists, there's been iterations of them for a long time, and it's been the devil being in the details about either having the shell of the deck and then when one new card comes out, recognizing that this is the card that pushes it over the top, or about playing and playtesting and figuring out the last little adjustments or clever rules interactions that can be employed, clever plays that can be employed to turn around a difficult matchup that suddenly make these decks break out, especially in Modern where the card pool's so big that it's really difficult for one person to spot every interaction.
Right, that's a very good point, Tim. We're talking about that Hardened Scales Affinity deck from yesterday. Well, most of the cards in the deck have been legal for years now. Suddenly comes Dominaria, and there's a Sparing Construct. That deck plays a 2-off, and suddenly the deck is a viable and powerful modern option. Of course, it's not because of the Sparing Construct, it's because people have been paying attention and iterating and fine-tuning it. And it's very difficult, but when you can pull it off, you just can really take a format by surprise.
Yeah, and the rewards aren't just potentially, trophies, prizes, qualification pro tours, and all that sort of thing. It's a very gratifying feeling,
right,
when something that you've been working hard on pays off. So here we are in Game 3. Winston Oyedemari looking to make it a 2-1 victory. Starts off with an Ezra's Tower into Exploration Map. There is a Forest on turn 2, so he's not going to get turn 3 Tron. He should have mulliganed a bit, apparently. But he does have Chromatic Star to dig a little deeper and passes things across to Mateus.
Oh, and Mateus draws that Dampening Sphere, the card we were talking about. It's gonna delay Winston's gameplay so much if he chooses to play it in the next few turns. Of course, he's not pressured to play it right now because he knows Winston doesn't have Tron immediately. But whenever Winston plays that second, uses pieces into play, that will be the trigger for Mateus to prioritize getting Damping Sphere on the board over basically anything else.
Damping Sphere, such an interesting card because there are some matchups where essentially the entire first sentence you just ignore and you just think about the fact that each spell a player casts that costs 1 or more to cast costs 1 more for each spell previously cast that turn. You stop people storming. And then you play against Tron, and that second sentence, I mean, it's not irrelevant, but it's not that big a deal. But the first sentence, absolute hammer blow. Suddenly all of these Tron pieces, it just lands that tap for colorless. Rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a perfect sideboard card for this matchup. It's going to buy Mateus a few turns, which is what he needed, to take the games where he's on the draw, where his fast hands maybe are not as fast as Winston. So, all right, fair stick. First, he still has a mana for Damping Sphere this turn. Just good sequencing on his part.
Yep, this is exactly the turn to play it. The turn before the Tron comes online. Damping Sphere coming down. And I mean, the line about making subsequent spells more expensive, it's not nothing. There are lots of small, cheap spells that get employed by Tron lists in order to set themselves up for future turns, draw into the cards that they need. And, after this Ancient Stirrings, the next spell that gets cast this turn is going to cost 2, or at least 2, should I say, as there will be that extra Damping Sphere tax.
Yeah, Tron does have, sometimes it needs to play a lot of spheres to cycle through his deck. He's not going to be able to do even that with a Damping Sphere into play. Damping Sphere, really powerful card. It's something that any deck of any color can play. So some of the linear decks that have a fundamental turn of 4 kill, like Elvis, like Titan Shift, they would be wise to just add that card to the sideboard if they expect to play against Tron, or if they expect Storm, or if they expect KCI. It's a lot of uses for a colorless sideboard card.
And there we see Mateus just pointing at the sphere as Winston attempts to cast his Exploration Map. It does cost 2, as it's the second spell being cast that turn. Expedition Map, sorry. Beautiful artwork on that one. And here comes Bloodbraid Elf. Now, yes, Mateus remembers that he has to pay an extra 1 for that spell that's being cast off Bloodbraid Elf. But nice little ramp there. Also provides a threat.
Yeah, even if he doesn't have the big payoff, like the Escape Shift and the Titan, that's still a reasonable clock against Winston. He's really not going to do much for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, Winston's suddenly forced to play a far fairer game than he would possibly have wanted to in this format at this stage.
Okay, so I think you see a Worm Coil Engine on a Winston's hand. This is actually a really good card to play in that situation. He can cast it not this turn, but next turn. It's going to absolutely stabilize the board. And, if Mateus doesn't have that big mana payoff, he could just ride the Worm Coil to victory, or at least be able to survive until he has access to 7 or 8 mana, and then just hard cast his powerful spells the difficult way.
All right, but for now, it's all about what Mateus can get down here. He's continuing to get things going. Another Blood-Battered Elf, mismatched artwork, but you know what? We will not give him too hard a time about that. Casts a Farseek of this one. This is third copy of Farseek of the game. You can start finding Valak at the Molten Pinnacle. He can really make his lands work for him here quite nicely.
Yeah, so, he's going to take another land out of his library. He can do that with a Secure Tribelder and attach land as well. And, usually those deck thinning aspects, they're not super relevant. But when you do have enough of those facts, it is noticeable how much your draws improve. So Winston's going to throw that Warping Whale there. It means maybe that's a card he would like to save to a future Scape Shift. Maybe he's counting here on the fact that if Mateus had Escape Shift in hand, he would have cast it this turn. So since that didn't happen, he's just going to fire at the first sorcery he can.
All right, big old swings coming in here. Double Blood-Braid Elf plus that Secure Tribelder. Not too often you see the Elder in the red zone, but every point counting here for Mateus Yanagura.
It is a big deck, and you can see the importance of that Worm Coil Engine that Winston has in hand. It's going to stop that beatdown code.
Yeah, the life gain on it, a big deal. There's also a Surgical Extraction in hand for Winston. What sort of things do you think might be a target for that one, Lucas?
I think the line he would prefer with that would be counter, Escape Shift, then exile the other copies. Or he could also use a Ghost Quarter on Valakut and Molten Pinnacle, and then exile the remaining copies.
Yeah, getting rid of Valakut seems like a lovely option. Surgical Extraction, in a similar vein to Damping Sphere, one of those cards that everyone can at least consider for their sideboard. The Phyrexian mana on it, very straightforward to pay. Everyone starts with 20 life. You can afford to pay 2 for a Surgical Extraction, and it really does punish the decks that have a very specific key card that if you can get rid of it, somehow find it in the graveyard and without having lost the game, and then just exile all of them, it's a gigantic play, but does not impact the board, does not do a huge amount until there's one of those key cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, it's the fact that it's colorless means any deck has an out for the plan A of KCI, for instance. Of course, the deck can play around it. It does have some backup plans after sideboard, but maybe they're not expecting it. So Mateus looks like okay. So he has a Lightning Bolt. So if he attacks and Winston chooses to block, he can finish off the Worm Coil Engine. He's still going to have to deal with the tokens afterward, and he's still not going to push any damage to this turn.
Yeah, I mean, in point of fact, if he uses the Lightning Bolt, he's actually gaining Winston 2 life simply because the lifelink on Worm Coil Engine gains 6, 4 damage will get through most likely, and that's not a particularly exciting exchange.
Yeah, so I'm not even sure it's something he wants to do. All right.
I guess that Lightning Bolt's pretty good, assuming that you find a Valakut, because it means that Valakut trigger plus Lightning Bolt kills Worm Coil Engine, and once you've got the 2 smaller worms, yes, they die to Valakut triggers relatively easily.
Yeah, unfortunately for Mateus, he does have his 3 basic forests into play, so he's going to have to get some mountains into play first before being able to activate Valakut. So the Born plan is still a few turns away. It's still absolutely an out for him. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and if you give a deck as powerful as Winston is in the late game time, he might be able to play his powerful spells by hard casting them. 7 mana is already enough for a lot of cards from Winston. You can see he's giving some thought here on what's his play supposed to be. Oh, I don't like that one because Secure Tribelder can jump block and prevent the lifelink. It's a play that happened last game, so I'm sure Winston is aware of it. So if he did that, maybe it's because he has a backup plan. I don't think he was counting on gaining life. It was not a mistake on his part, but a forced play he was trying to put Mateus to make.
Yeah, we'll see soon enough exactly what that play is. I must admit, I'm kind of intrigued right now. 3, 6, 7 mana World Breaker coming down here.
Yeah, just a giant blocker.
Blowing up one of the red sources, one of the mountains.
Okay, so Mateus is going to attack for 4 damage if Winston chooses to block. With Lightning Bolt in his hand, that's 7. So he's 3 damage away from killing Winston this turn. But if he doesn't top deck the burn spells, maybe he doesn't attack at all, and because he's going to need to hold back his Secure Tri-Builder for Worm Coil Engine's next attack.
Yeah, I still don't really like that attack by Wormcoil Engine. I don't feel like with one blocker back he's necessarily entirely safe, Winston Oyodamori here.
Yeah, he gave Mateus an out to win this turn. So that is the downside of the play he made.
All right, so Mateus just weighing up his options here. Still cards to work with in hand. Sakura Tri-Elder on its own, not a particularly impactful card in this. I think that's the other card in hand for Mateus here.
Yeah, so Mateus is thinking if he's going to attack with his Bloodbraid Elves, he's going to lose one of them, but he's going to push to 3 damage. He's trying to figure out if that is a winning line or not. Actually, the difference between dealing 4 damage or 3 damage this turn is huge. So the fact that he has a Sakura Tri-Builder in hand means he can push the necessary damage. Next turn he's going to jump block with the fresh Security Tri-Builder, prevent the lifelink, and then he has another possibility to draw the Lightning Bolt.
And I guess the Ghost Quarter in play does mean that a lot of Valak lines are kind of closed off to him, so he's going to have to get damage through the old-fashioned way here.
Yeah, I think that's the play Mateus is supposed to make, just playing to his outs.
And just think, had Winston held back that turn, he essentially would have meant no attacks could have happened.
Yeah, he would be safe against that particular line Mateus took, but maybe he's giving Mateus more turns to draw into a escape shift and present lethal that way.
Okay, so here comes Wormcoil Engine number 2. These guys, they hunt in packs apparently.
All right, I think it's top deck Lightning Bolt or bust for Mateus.
I mean, all that escape shift, I presume, right?
Or escape shift too, yeah. Because Winston is at 6 life, he can bring enough Valakids and enough mountains that he can do damage even through a Ghost Quarter, I believe.
Tricky decision here for Winston. He's thinking long and hard, gets another attack in.
So if he casts Wormcoil Engine that he has in hand, he's going to have to pay 7 mana for it. So he won't be able to leave Ghost Quarter up since he already cast that Ancient Sturgeons earlier in the turn. It's important for him to remember that if he was counting on the Ghost Quarter.
Looks like there's another plan going. Expedition map. 2 Ghost Quarters now in play for Winston Oyodamori. That does cut down some of what's going on here. I don't think that there's quite enough lands to make everything work here, but we'll find out soon enough because Escape Shift was the top deck here for Mateus Yanagiri.
So now it does get a little bit complicated. Using a Ghost Quarter on Valakut with triggers on the stack is not going to work. So he needs to shoot down 2 mountains if there are Ravnica duels, and hopefully that keeps Mateo away from having enough triggers. But I don't think that's going to happen. He already have 3 mountains into play. He has that Sakura Tri-Builder. He can sacrifice 4 more. So I think that's lethal. I'm going to wait on players to see how it plays out, because just in case I'm messing up my math here. But I think Mateus got it.
Now, if it's me here and I'm Mateus, I kind of want to tap at least some of those lands because he's cast Escape Shift and Pass Priority. That means that, I mean, I guess that if Winston just lets it resolve anyway, then he's won. So maybe it's fine, but like having the mana floating just means that that Lightning Bolt in hand is easy to cast because the lands that come into play, he will end up having to put into play tapped. And the sacrifice is part of the resolution of the spell, not part of the cost. So this spell still very much on the stack.
So this is very much a desperation move, but maybe using a Ghost Quarter on a Cinder Glade, then exile it of Surgical Extraction, and then hope Mateus doesn't have enough remaining mountains. I don't think that's going to work. I'm just trying to walk through all the possible iterations here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny old spot here because ultimately, when you use the Ghost Core to the card, that the land that Mateus wants to fetch would be another forest, really. You don't want to have to fetch anything that counts as a mountain.
Right. It's really a matter of how many mountains Mateus has left in his deck. And I think this red-green version does play a lot of mountains. I think it's at least 10. Maybe the version with Cryptic Command and multiple colors, it runs fewer mountains and that line could work.
But, I mean, you can see here, I mean, this one decision taking Winston almost the same length of time as game one.
Right.
But, I mean,
it's okay.
perfectly reasonably. There's enough time. This game is not going to last longer than this turn.
So he's going to use it on the fetch land?
Interesting. Okay. And it's going to be a little bit close. I mean, this is Winston playing to his outs right here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he isn't as experienced in this matchup, so he doesn't know exactly the timing to use Ghost Quarter. I mean, I don't think there's any good timing left. I think Mateus just has the win here. But, you know, when in doubt, just trying to figure out what he's supposed to do.
One more Ghost Quarter to use. And with 9 lands in play, a whole bunch of red sources already out, this is a little precarious.
Yeah, Mateus knows how many mountains he has left and how many lands he needs to sacrifice. So I imagine he got things down here.
And the thing is that it's not as if Mateus even needs to fetch very many mountains out of his deck. He can leave 4 mountains in play. He only needs to do 6 damage here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one. That's a Valakut. That's another Valakut. Another mountain.
And there's another stomping down.
Yeah, that's enough.
Plenty
All right,
enough
Mateus
damage.
got it. Top deck scape shift when the game was turning away from him.
And there's the handshake. Mateus Yanagiuri picking up the win there, 2-1. We apologize, of course, that we weren't able to bring you all the details of game 1 there, a couple of technical issues, which we believe are now all resolved, so welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed what we did see of it. And we got to see a mulligan to 4 nearly working out, and then, you know, the big old scape shifts doing what they do, both in games 2 and game 3 there, so congratulations to Mateus, able to pick up his win, and based on the way that our things went, hopefully we will have a little bit more Magic to show you soon enough. Do not go anywhere. First, these messages. Hello and welcome back to Grand Prix Sao Paulo. Tim Willoughby here alongside Lucas Esperberto, and we are rocketing through our round here. Round 13, it was a little unlucky early on with a couple of little technical bits, but we do have some more Time Walk magic to bring you. We're actually going to jump across into our game 2, try and get past whatever the hiccup was that got us a little hung up earlier on, to bring you some more magic here from our round 13 at Grand Prix Sao Paulo. So here we have Vinicius back against Daniel
Caixeta.
Yeah, I was not going to get close to on that one. But we've got some really cool decks here. Hollow One, a deck that has come up in relatively recent times, up against Amulet Titan though. So we saw there in the turn 1 Ancient Stirrings, revealing Amulet of Vigor, and that potentially leads to some very, very powerful plays in subsequent turns. I think that there is... Oh wow, this Thoughtseize very timely because Amulet of Vigor, Azusa Lost But Seeking, Summoner's Pact, a Braid, Primeval Titan. This is an absolutely stacked hand from Daniel here.
Okay, so it's actually an interesting decision. So he has 2 of the Titan effects, so maybe Vinicius is considering just taking the Amulet of Vigor. That is the card that helps Daniel ramp. But, you know, the constraint of having... yeah, I don't think it's an easy choice. He's going to go with Azusa and try to restrain Daniel's mana that way. But look, Amulet is extremely powerful in that deck. I wonder if you don't always have to take it with Thoughtseize, just because of all the crazy things it can do with the Ravnica bounce lands.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so cheap to cast as well means that if it's not dealt with right now, it will get put into play on this next turn. It's much, much safer in play, at least early doors, than anywhere else. Now this is game 2, so at this point these players will know a little bit about what's going on. Hollow One did pick up the game 1 against Titan. I mean, the Amulet deck, it does have the potential to just have some kind of clunky draws where it doesn't quite work out. It may be that that's what happened in game 1. We will never know. That lost to the sands of time. In the meantime though, Gemstone Mine coming down for Daniel. That will give him a source of whichever colors he needs in these early stages of the game, as Wooded Foothills does its best to do a similar job for Vinicius back here.
So one card that Hollow One can bring from the sideboard in this matchup is Ancient Grudge. It's kind of a free roll because if you discard it with, say, your Burning Increase, you get to play it from your graveyard for free. Now, it doesn't have a whole lot of targets against the Amulet Titan, but the target it does have, it's so good and so critical that it's worth the sideboard slot. Yeah. So that's what Vinicius had, just naturally drawn in his hand.
It's interesting, like the removal spell that only has 1 target, but that 1 target is super powerful. It doesn't come up very often, but like normally, I mean, this is why we sometimes see things like Fight with Fire in red sideboards in Standard. Like, there aren't so many cards that you desperately need to cast Fight with Fire on, but if Lyra comes down and you're a red deck, you really can't win any other way, so it does make sense to give yourself that out. So here is Summoner's Pact, finding Azusa Lost But Seeking, a second copy of that, and immediately casts the Legend and gets to play an additional land, then gets to replay the Gemstone Mine. So some pretty impressive mana ramp there. Obviously comparatively important because Summoner's Pact will need to get paid for next turn.
Yeah, Daniel. All right, okay. That's what you're supposed to do so you don't forget her pact.
Vinicius here, unlikely to have the sort of land destruction to be able to stop this pact getting paid for here. Does have a Burning Inquiry though. And one kind of funny thing about the Amulet deck, it has some very specific cards that it needs to fully properly go off. And if you can just effectively mill your opponent of some of those key cards, it can really runkle their plans. Yeah,
we saw Daniel had a Titan in hand. If Vinicius gets to discard it here, it's going to be huge for him.
Okay, so getting rid of card number 3 and card number 4. The reason that these guys rolling dice is basically it means that it's fully random. Like, I know that I personally feel happier letting a dice decide how I'm making my random choices than me pointing at something and feeling like maybe I've let myself get influenced by something or made a bad, albeit random decision.
Okay, I can respect that, but I have no patience for dice rolling. I'm just going to ask my opponent to shuffle. I'm not going to look while he's shuffling, and then you're just going to take 2 random cards.
as it stands, Primeval Titan and a Summoner's Pact getting hit by that Burning Inquiry. So, I mean, that's not the reason you play it, but if you happen to mess up what your opponent's got going on, you know, that'll do. You'll take it.
Yeah, very, 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 very fortunate for Vinicius there.
I mean, he also did discard a Hollow One to his ability there.
Very, very, very unlucky for Vinicius then.
Somewhere in between.
Right.
And basically, what playing Hollow One is all about is being able to deal with the swings of some of these random effects. They, on balance, do end up very powerful, but I'm sure that part of the reason that Hollow One was a deck that took a while to come to light is that when you first start playing it feels terrible playing all these random effects that are potentially just going to leave you unable to do the things that you want to do.
So Vinicius has that Secure Tribe Scout, I believe is the name of the card. Mm-hmm. It lets you put a land from his hand into play. He already has plenty of mana.
All right, another Burning Inquiry here. See, Daniel here, disciplined, doesn't even look at the cards that he's drawn off it, because he might never get to use them, so why taunt yourself with the hope?
Why subject yourself to disappointment?
Well, if you don't like dice rolling, you're watching the wrong match here, I'm afraid, Lucas. This is how these guys are doing it.
See, it's those rerolls that drive me crazy.
Yeah, this is probably not the deck for you, really, is it?
No, not at all. Only on the Magic Online. Another Hollow will be discarded by Vinicius.
And he discarded another Burning Inquiry, so he can't get someone again later.
And I think he has only lands now in hand.
He did hit another Amulet of Vigor in Daniel's hand there. That not one that he would have been too happy to leave lying around. But, oh look, 6 mana. What does that mean? It means a Primeval Titan. Yeah,
that's the play that Amulet deck needs to do basically every game. Deck revolves around that Primeval Titan. He's going to go, I think, for the safe play of finding a Tularia West, returning it to his hand with the trigger from Simic Griff Chamber, which means he can have another Titan next turn. Yeah, Vinicius had enough.
What a funny old game that we had there. All of these Burning Inquiries that didn't quite pan out for Vinicius. Meanwhile, Daniel just sort of does some things, gets a little bit of acceleration going, but not so much that it's worth, you know, writing a letter to the Queen about, and then cast the Primeval Titan, and that's good enough. Yeah, you can see Vinicius had the early disruption, had the Burning Inquiry, which is a card he wants to play. He just didn't have the threat to go with it because he discarded both Hollow Ones. Yeah, there are other iterations of dice rolling of how that game went, right, where the result is completely reversed. So if you don't like dice rolling, how do you feel about non-90 degree tapping as this Tularia West comes into play at a funny old angle there? Oh, Daniel. Have we managed to find the perfect match to tilt you here? I think of you as normally a pretty sort of level-headed player. Like, there are many Brazilian players who are very sort of passionate, heart on their sleeve when they play. I think of you as being pretty, calm on the surface, but we may have found the perfect set of triggers. Look, I just want the board state to be as clear as possible. So that 90-degree angle, yeah, players know it's stopped this turn, but something that if Daniel does every turn, maybe every now and then it's going to be 110 degrees, and players are not going to be sure. Of course, completely minor, just nitpicking. This is what happens when essentially we're waiting for Faithless Lootings and such to resolve. I mean, we need something to talk about between dice rolls. Or during dice rolls, there's plenty of them apparently. Though at least one Burning Inquiry already in the graveyard, so maybe we've dodged a bullet there. So many cards in this graveyard. An early Gurmag Angler by the looks of things, maybe a Tasica. Great, respectable threat, a lot of pressure against Daniel. Vinicius with the turn 2 Gurmag Angler. Great start by him. Yeah, the Abrade in hand, not going to be enough to kill off the big old zombie fish. 2 mana available though. It looks like we might see an Explore here. Draws a card, gets to play another land. Almost a Time Warp. Do you see there how he went from, he was 9 degrees tapped and then just went, oh, I'm just going to untap a little bit. It's like he knows. Yeah. And then let's play a creature behind our lands as well, just to completely mess with everyone in chat. And I mean, he did put it above his lands last game, so I wonder what's going on in his head here. All right,
Thanks, Daniel.
I mean, that's one that's in the rules now. You do have to have your
it's in the rules. Okay.
front of your land. So that one's easy enough to fix. Goblin Law, so drawing some cards, then discarding a whole bunch at random. Yeah, the Goblin Law, this was one of those cards that after Ken Yukihiro showed us the way at the Pro Tour, all of a sudden everyone was diving to their long boxes of old cards to see whether or not they happen to have any of this particular uncommon from 10th edition.
Yeah, I think a good number of Japanese players showed up with the deck. But Ken Yukihiro, he's such an exciting player to watch. He's always playing something, outside the box. It's kind of player that, when I'm at the Pro Tour and I finish my match, I'm going to go look where I sit at and try to see what he brought to the tournament.
Yeah, and he's actually a player who got a number of reps out of hardened scales when it was in standard. And the other thing that's good about watching Ken play is that, you know what? He always appears to be having more fun than most people in the room. He's just always got a smile on his face. He's having a good time while he's playing. And that means that even if he was playing a boring deck, it would be kind of exciting to watch. Azusa lost, but Seeking coming down now here for Daniel.
There's some interesting tech from Daniel's hand here that you get a peek at. It's Hornet Queen. It's something that is going to very easily deal with that Gourmet Angler. And he's very close to casting it, actually. He has 3, 4, 5 mana into play. And because of Azusa and Security Tribe Scout, he's going to play whatever lands he has remaining in his hand.
Picks up a Bajuka Bog there as well. Gets rid of all the cards remaining in the graveyard, so subsequent Gomag Angler is going to be a little bit harder to cast. I think that Hornet Queen's a card that was in sideboards even back to the days of Justin Cohn making the finals of the Pro Tour with Amulet Bloom, back when you could have Summer Bloom in there, which made the deck very potent indeed.
Yeah, it's a good one-off target for your Summoner Spect. And you can, of course, just draw it from your hand.
So Security Tribe Scout doing valuable work there, jumping in the way of a big attacker, putting a land into play on the way out. And, I mean, this is one of the things that I'm sometimes a little sketchy on when it comes to this Hollow One deck. If the opposing player is able to get down just blockers, and like ideally blockers big enough that they can start making trades difficult, but even just any blockers, sometimes the aggressiveness of the start that can come from the other side can be really tough.
Oh, so Vinicius, he had Engineered Explosive in hand. He just played it for 1 to use his mana efficiently. I think he's going to regret that. Right now he's regretting it.
Yeah, this is a lot of 0-cost tokens being put into play, and that Engineered Explosives, well, the engineering on it may be a bit over-engineered. If it had just been put into play with X as 0, firstly, there would be mana untapped to immediately use it. Secondly, there would be a great set of threats to deal with. And, yeah, there are those insect tokens. Flying, Death Touch, perfect set of blockers, potentially perfect set of attackers at some point. And Daniel suddenly in great shape for this game 3.
Yeah, and he didn't even draw his Primeval Titan in these games. One of the ways to win those kind of win from those kind of spots is with that Hornet Queen.
Yeah, the attack for 2 from Bloodghast.
Won't even bother.
Yeah, no need to trade with it because we know that all it takes is a land to get that one back. Bloodghast, originally from Zendikar, and it's just been a very, very powerful card for much of the time it's been available. Anytime you've got a creature that just will not consistently die, keeps coming back from the graveyard, triggering things, you know that it's going to be a potent threat.
So Daniel has the ability to return his Bajuki back to his hand with any of the Ravnica bounce lands that he draw. So maybe he's waiting for that opportunity before blocking the Bloodghast. No, double braid. Okay, that's another way to kill Gourmet Angler. Is going to free some of his insectiles, death-touching insectiles to attack.
Yeah, and here he's in a spot where, while yes, he could hold back a creature to block Bloodghast, he's just better off trying to make it a fair old race. This is a fairly large attack here.
7 a turn is a lot of damage.
And Vinicius just sort of trying to figure out if he can do anything about the swarm that's coming his way. The Queen Bee being shot down by Lightning Bolt, but all of those drones, they continue to fly on over.
Right, Daniel is too far ahead in the race. Kind of going through my head here, what kind of outs Vinicius could find himself from this spot. It's kind of difficult for him.
And honestly, if he had just held back that engineered explosives,
Yeah.
this game would have looked so different here. Collective Brutality, discarding Ancient Grudge in order to kill Azusa Lost but Seeking, drain Daniel for a couple of points of life here. I mean, that does now mean that the damage race is looking a little bit healthier in Vinicius' favor, but he's still not winning this race. It's just that it's become far closer.
Yeah, on board, Daniel wins this race, but Vinicius has haste, threats with haste, has lightning bolts he can cast. So Daniel is just going to play it safe. His deck's not supposed to win by attacking with beasts. He just primarily wants to use them to buy time. So I think it's a good spot for him to block. Vinicius can use his fetch land to return. Okay, that's a lot of returns now. He had a land from his hand, so he didn't have to crack his Bloodstained Mired, and it was another fetch land, so his Bloodghast can return another 2 times if he chooses to.
All right, here's the Explore. Dig, land. Well, only one land, one Explore. We won't yet know what the card picked up was because these attacks coming in first. And Daniel says, you know what? Maybe we should just make it 3. Keep this thing close.
So 3 a turn, Daniel is at 12. That means he needs 4 attacks. Bloodghast is going to need 5 attacks. So yeah, it is a race. He's still winning on board. It's just that the threat that Vinicius can draw might swing that race in his favor.
Yeah, we don't know quite what was picked up off that Explore just yet. I think it was an Amulet of Vigor, which right now doesn't do a whole lot.
Down to 6.
Yeah, this is some anemic beatdown on both sides, but I think it's important to look at it through the lens of racing.
Right.
Assuming nothing changes, who's winning this race?
So when Vinicius only had a Bloodstained Mired into play, Daniel thought he could keep that Bloodghast out of the game forever. The fact that Vinicius stopped a second fetch land meant Daniel got away from that plan. So it's good a reassessment of his role. It means he didn't make a mistake when he tried to jump block the previous turn. It's just that the situation on board changed and he's changed his mind because of it. Some respect. Okay. All right. That's Titan time.
Yeah. Now there's lots of things in principle that can be picked up here. Often there are unusual creatures that get brought in from the sideboard. I mean, if there's the likes of an Obstinate Baloth, which would have been fantastic in the face of the Burning Inquiries, for example, that would have been good. The fact that this Primeval Titan's being picked up suggests to me that Obstinate Baloth not an option because it would be great here too in this race. As it stands, though, picking up a Primeval Titan, being able to throw that one down, it's as good a blocker as any, and with an Amulet of Vigor here, it might actually be that Daniel can put together a lethal attack here.
Okay, Vinicius needs to remember to activate his Engineered Explosives at this position, or he's going to die to Haste, Double Strike, Vigilant, Primeval Titan, clobbering his face. Hold on. All right. Okay. He sees it.
Jolly good. It would have been a very unfortunate way to lose. Firstly, you didn't hold it back and play it on 0. Secondly, when they did play a 1-drop, you forgot to use it to blow the thing up. That would have been just insult to injury.
No, he's on top on things. That's why he's at 11-1 at his Grumpy.
As things stand, picking up a Radiant Fountain, already kind of nice. That 2 life essentially is an extra turn, and Simic Growth Chamber coming along means that one of these lands is going to be able to be picked up, whether that's Teleria West, whether that's another Radiant Fountain. I think this is looking quite good for Daniel Kataxa here.
So that's another side of the Titan that we see here. He can get utility lands to gain more life. He could get a land that produces a 0-1 defender blocker. So, all the mileage he can get from the Titan. He can get a hasty attack, he can get more Titans, he can stabilize from a low life point.
And even another copy of Amulet of Vigor. That one played after the Engineered Explosives blown up. Yeah, I can't quite see what Vinicius can do here. 9 damage, a lot to achieve with just the cards that he's picked up for this turn.
Yeah, he's got to do it through a blocker too. Okay. Let's roll some more dice before we finish this match.
And why not? I mean, I guess he can hope that somehow or other, maybe Daniel picks up the dice he's put on top of his deck to remind him about the Summoner's Pact. He then forgets to put them back and then loses to his own Summoner's Pact.
Yeah, maybe that.
We're really clutching at straws here, but...
So I gotta say, I've been very impressed by Daniel's play this match. He's gonna have a 12 wins, a good shot at top 8. In a deck as powerful as Amulet Titan, when you have a good pilot in it, I think it's always a threat to win any tournament it's at.
Okay, so Vinicius here, he's got a lot of work to do. He gets to play a hollow one. Unfortunately, that's all he's done here. 3 points of damage coming through in the air, and then there's that Primeval Titan.
Yeah, that's the remaining final play that Daniel needed to do. All right, there's the hand from Vinicius. Wishing him good luck. He still has a shot at making the top 8.
Yep, 11-2. Not a bad place to be with just a couple of rounds left to go.
He can fight through that.
And Daniel
Kaisheta. Right.
All right. Daniel picking up the win there. Really like seeing the Amulet deck in action. It's one of those decks that I think that when there were bannings that lowered its overall power level, there were a lot of people that kind of jumped off the deck entirely. Clearly there's still a little bit of play in it, and it's working out very, very well for Daniel there. So congratulations to him. Not long to go here, and he potentially may already have pretty much locked up his spot in the top 8 here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Great stuff from him. Very much enjoying what we're seeing in this modern format. Even this late in the day, still seeing decks that we've not seen before, and we're going to get a chance to jump across and see a little bit more Time Walk before the end of our round here. We can see players milling around behind us, but there's still a couple of matches out, so we're going to get a chance to see Tron versus Ironworks. This is the one we saw a little bit of before, but this is game 3 between Thiago Casanta and...
Oh, it's still live. Okay, so we have here my teammate from Haruya Aladdin, Sebastian Peugeot, playing against Thiago Casasanta, a guy I know from a very long time. He's actually from the same city I was born in. He's playing at Tron, apparently. I think it's a good matchup for Ironworks overall. It really depends on how prepared the Tron deck wants to be after sideboard.
Well, my slight concern is that die down the bottom of the screen, which suggests to me there's not very many turns left. And that, if anything, is a massive boon for Sebastian Pozzo, because while the Tron list can potentially power out something big, it's going to struggle to deal 20 damage.
That's a draw right there. Neither player can win.
Yeah, turn 5. And Sebastian...
Oh, he had the...
he had essentially everything he needed, but...
Right. He had a lot of draws to find the Mirror Retriever from that position, but he needed one more turn.
And it looks like, yeah, that's 1-1. And, you know, they're chatting away, but ultimately, 11-1-1 right now is still a great spot to be in. An unintentional draw at the end of the round.
Yeah, it's still a live result for both players.
Yeah.
So,
and there's the signature. So at the end of our round, the reason we jumped back to that, it said Time Walk, it was actually live. The reason we jumped back to that is because that was essentially one of the very last matches going on in the entirety of the room. No reason to jump around too much and go back and show other things when we know that we're essentially going to be at the end of things anyway there. Pozzo still doing great work. We are very likely to get a chance to see him in our top 8. And, you know, for Team Haruya, you know, it's nice to see a bit of representation there. This obviously doesn't impact the team series itself, but making sure that everyone's got their reps in. You know, someone's going to be playing Modern at the Pro Tour in Minneapolis soon enough. And, of course, we're going to have more Modern soon enough for you right here in Sao Paulo, because after these messages, it's going to be Riley Knight and Paulo Vitor de Rosa bringing you our penultimate round of the Swiss here from Sao Paulo.